Welcome to Ask Gwen, everyone. Today with me I have Sarabeth, and please, please, please treat Sarah kindly because she is not a seasoned veteran at this. So please just treat her with love and compassion. And I'm going to let Miss Sarabeth take it away and share more about her story.
Thank you so much. And thank you for that kind introduction. I appreciate that. I'm really happy to be here, and thank you for, allowing to interview me. It's exciting to, just share more about myself and base and why I started it. So I guess if it makes sense, I can just talk a little bit about my background and get into that, and then
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So I guess I'll start at college. So I went to Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh. I grew up in Metro Detroit, and I knew I wanted to get out of Michigan, but I didn't want to go so far. My older sister had gone to North Carolina, and I thought Pittsburgh sounded nice, lovely. They had, lots of rivers and nature, which I was really used to and wanted to definitely still have access to that. And Carnegie Mellon was such a great place for me because they have such a breadth of, people who are experts at what they do. So we have people who are in the music school, people in the acting school, design experts, and of course the computer science world. And many more. And I kind of sat in the middle. I started off as a global studies major because I've always been really interested in history, historiography. And then I wanted to kind of branch out a little bit, try and see maybe what was out there in the business world. So I joined the professional business fraternity, which was co-ed, and kind of turned on this this different switch in myself that was a bit more intense, and had to really figure things out as they go, because a lot of kids were in the business school and I was just in the humanities school, and had been learning, French and German for the first 2 years of college, not really thinking about what I was going to do after school. But then I was studying abroad in France for my fall semester junior year. And I was just thinking to myself, I don't think that, going down the professional consulting route is going to be fulfilling for me. I had, talked to a few people who had previously done that. And the more I learned about it, the less excited I got about it. And so that kind of, I just started thinking about what would be fulfilling. And throughout my life, health has always been a key center point of my identity. I had neuroblastoma, which is a childhood cancer, as a child. I don't remember any of it. I always say it was more of my parents' cancer because I was so young, and thankfully I just have good memories of going back to the hospital every year to get my checkups in Chicago, which was the one time a year I could get McDonald's. So that was, it was more of a treat for me. And they did such an amazing job just coaching me along the whole process. And then after that, I, would have fainting spells during choir, performances, or I was a figure skater as a child. So I ended up having injuries in my leg, benign bone tumor. And then in college, I had a nodule grow on my thyroid, which I had to have taken out. And so, thankfully now I'm just on thyroid medication. But the whole process of being well and not being well is, always been a part of my life. And I was thinking, you know what, I think I have so much more curiosity and interest around physiology and the journey of health and illness that maybe I think, let's go pre-med, let's do that and see what comes of that. So I came back from studying abroad and really jammed in every prereq the spring of my junior year and then all senior year. And I barely remember any of it because it was such a blur. Um, and then right from there, I studied for the MCAT after graduation, but it was such a quick turnaround that I didn't apply to med schools and I had a year to kind of sit, which was really nice. But I found a master's program at Duke that was really interesting because it combined all of these um, interests that I had. So I went to the divinity school for my master's, where I met just the most incredible professors and did a fellowship that combined theology, medicine, and culture. So it was kind of everything that I was looking to learn more about. Um, and throughout that year, I got to study with a lot of professors who were practicing physicians, and a lot of them were involved in palliative care, which you may be familiar with. It's
I am.
it's a
I
type
am, but my
of,
listeners are not.
okay. So I'll just give a brief
Yeah,
explainer. Basically, a lot of people are familiar with hospice care and how it it's based around an understanding of holistic well-being and taking into account, what is this person's goal for health and quality of life. Well, palliative care kind of takes that and expands it to all different types of people who are in the hospital, who are out of the hospital, and focuses so much more on the quality of life. And it's never a subtractor, so it's never saying you're not going to pursue this potential medical route. It's just saying, let's take into account, what are your goals? Do you want to, walk in 6 months? Do you want to see, for people who are closer to end of life, do you want to make sure that you can see your granddaughter's graduation? Or, do you want to be able to play bridge with your friends? And really centers all of that alongside of a holistic care team that includes a lot of times care coordinators and nurses and NPs and doctors, and then your specialist doctors, all in very, very close communication to make sure that everything is centered around that idea of quality of life. Um, so I completely fell in love with that way of approaching health and the patient, because it's like, yeah, that makes sense. That's how all medicine should be approached. Um, and what I started to realize is that while it's more commonplace now in the hospital for a lot of patients, specifically cancer patients, it wasn't as common for people who have, multiple chronic illnesses living outside the hospital. And that whole, practice of medicine wasn't really being extended in the way that I felt it should be, especially as we have multiple chronic illnesses in the US growing at a really, really high rate, and people are going to need more specialized care um, outside the hospital.
yes.
So, mhm,
I said, yes, they are, because more and more, I mean, let's just take the elephant in the room. Um, Coronavirus
mhm,
is a illness and it's a disability because you have to deal with it for the rest of your life. People
totally.
think that COVID, you get COVID, you you get COVID, you only deal with it once. No,
Mm-mm.
you get
Yeah,
COVID, you have to deal with the particularly lung damage,
yeah.
COVID, the rest of your life.
Mhm.
And I don't care whether it's mild, I don't care whether it's severe. Now, the more severe COVID is, the worse it is. But I'm like, hello?
Yeah.
Are people thinking straight? Oh, don't get me started. But
We're
it's
on the same.
good, man.
Yeah,
Yeah, but
it's insane.
it's insane. It's insane. People think, oh, it's a one-time disability. No, it's not.
Yeah, it's not the.
OCP is all one-time lack of oxygen injury. No, it's not. I
Yeah.
have to deal with it for the rest of my life. And
Oh, you got COVID?
I came close to getting
Okay,
COVID,
okay.
but I know people that did,
Yeah.
and I came very, 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 very close to getting COVID, but not necessarily and that cough you just heard was
Mhm.
a asthmatic cough. They
Mhm.
diagnosed it. They diagnosed my cough as a lack of movement cough. Well, I move, so that's not it. And
Yeah,
now I'm getting diagnosed with asthma. That's gonna be a journey in itself because
yeah.
I actually got tested for COVID because they thought I had COVID at one point, and
Oh my
turns out
goodness.
the test came back negative. But
Yeah,
it's
thank
like
God.
really, really, when you think about multiple disabilities
Yeah.
and CP and epilepsy are a CP and epilepsy are common one, and I know that spina bifida and CP, even though it's not common, it could happen because CP is lack of oxygen to the brain.
Mm.
So when you think about um, multiple disabilities that people have,
Mhm.
yeah, hello, let's then focus on one disability for palliative care here.
Yeah. Um, yeah, just, the whole it's this whole year has been so strange and in the way that, like, I think for the first time that I've been seeing, to this extent that, medical institutions and advice have just been so warped and polarized in this way, and it's very unsettling because, like, people rely on, experts
Yeah,
to give them guidance, and
yeah,
it's very unsettling to, I mean, even just the mask issue, and there's no reason for that to be kind of a thing, and I
no,
find it so unfortunate that it is. It's just, we got to wear our masks. It's like
yeah,
the first layer. Um, but yeah, I guess going jumping back into I'll wrap up my personal background quickly, but so I was at Duke, and then my partner, I've been together now for 4 years. We had, back then just gotten together, and he was living in San Francisco. So I graduated and I was doing some research with the global health department, one of the professors there for a few months. So I thought, okay, I'll go to San Francisco and, we'll just figure it out. So I went there, I was doing research, and it was all great. But then I found a research program at Mount Sinai in New York that was working to build a home-based palliative care program. And I thought, wow, that sounds literally exactly what I have been wanting to work on. So I got in touch with someone there, hopped on a phone call, and then she messaged me back and was like, yeah, they're looking for a clinical research coordinator. I spoke to them, and then um, my boyfriend also got a job in New York, so we moved to New York like 4 months after me flying to San Francisco, and we
uh,
just kind of started our New York life there. And Mount Sinai was such an incredible opportunity to be immersed in, and I was doing the clinical research coordination, so it's we had a very small team, so I was lucky enough to be able to, do more than the regular, just filling out surveys, but I was getting to go to patients' homes. I was visiting them in clinic hours, and was just, every single day I talked to a patient, I felt so privileged because it's, um, the questions I was asking them, because, in these surveys, are fairly personal, and, I it's hard to ask someone to be that vulnerable with, someone they just met a lot of times. And the willingness to participate and, for there, because we had two different studies. We had one where there was an intervention study where they would be given a care team that was fully, a full palliative care team. And then there was an interview study. And especially for the interview study patients, so many of them were just so willing to give their time and their experiences to, advance research and future care programs. And yeah, it was incredible.
So basically, are you still doing um are you still doing medical research?
No, I'm not. A few things happened that caused me to leave Mount Sinai, and so yeah, one of them, I think when I moved to New York, it was my first time living in a big city. It was the first time, living with my boyfriend, and we got a dog, and we're both, um, I tend to like do things and think about it afterwards. And um, I was developing anxiety and panic attacks for the first time. And just I had no idea what was going on. Like I'd never felt that way before. And I don't know if I had a long commute, like I had an hour commute each way. It wasn't, anything that other people don't do. It might have been the environment. I had, grew up in Michigan, spent a lot of time, my whole family's in North Carolina now. And then in San Francisco, which is a city, but it's very different. And New York was such a constant shock to my system that it just was producing so much stress for me. And, so it was partially, I think that, and then also partially I wanted to pursue other things. I've been, going to Carnegie Mellon. I was surrounded by all these people who were in tech and produced things and just made things, coded things and designed things. And I've always been a creative person. I love to do photography, and I have an urge to like make things. And I think I am attracted to clinical research because of the search of the truth. I don't think there are many other places where you really, people are genuinely and relentlessly like looking for truth. And like you go through months and months of detailed work just to get a small sliver of the answer to this larger thing. But it's the pursuit of like objective truth that I really love there. But I needed something else. So while I was at Mount Sinai, I started a meetup group called Design in Healthcare with two other women. And we just put it on meetup.com. And the two women I worked with were in health tech. They were doing like product management jobs. And so they had connections to healthcare tech companies, and we would, just gather people together and talk about how can we design healthcare to be better for patients. And so during that, I was starting to learn product design and, anything I could that would kind of help expand my skill set per se. Um, and then I guess, I really started to this runs into my to base essentially. But while I was personally looking for natural ways to help my anxiety, I was also noticing that in the care program, a lot of patients were asking me about cannabis and, how can you guys prescribe medical marijuana? I've heard about hemp CBD. How do I, use this responsibly? And so I was noticing a pattern there, and looking around for myself or someone who wants a more empirical approach to any supplement that I put or that I, start using. I kind of saw that like there wasn't that option out there for people. And when you look at the markets, having come from San Francisco to New York, San Francisco and California is just light years ahead of where people in New York were, even in just understanding the difference between hemp versus CBD,
Yeah.
CBD versus THC. Um, and so I wanted to see if, I could create something that would help give people the safest way to approach this category, especially if you're coming to it for health rather than recreation, or like, oh, I need to chill out on a Friday night with a bath bomb, which like I love bath bombs and they definitely have a place. But a lot of people are coming to this category from a more health focused perspective. And so um, I started working on base, and then I wanted to, do it as much as I could and try and see, how far I could take it. So that's when I stopped working at Mount Sinai. But it really holds a special place in my heart and was very, very formative for me.
Well, Colorado is a legal state, by the way. We have legalized marijuana. And my dad, who passed away of lung cancer, speaking of palliative care, he didn't get palliative care. I wish he did, but that's another long story and stuff why. But he believed in marijuana in general. So I told him, I said, look, dude, if my CP were ever to get bad enough, I would do THC. I
Mhm,
would do anything that doesn't get you high per se.
mhm,
And so I think and he was using it as a coping mechanism, relaxing mechanism. So I think that the aspects of medical marijuana in the health field is amazing because that could help people along with traditional medicine. I would be the first one to tell you I won't take Advil. I will take
mm,
anything but
mhm,
I will do essential oils over Advil and over I will do medical marijuana over essential oils too.
mm.
Because that to me it's one, it's a little bit more natural. Two, that to me is just I it's a wonderful thing that we have, and I wish that all 50 states were, legal.
Yeah, yeah, totally. I think we're on the path to that for sure. Who knows how long it'll exactly take, but I'm really hopeful. Um, and yeah, I mean, I think it's one of those things where it was shut out of research for so long. And it's just starting to, we're just starting to like really investigate.
Accepted.
Yeah, and the endocannabinoid system in general. Like, I think that was one of the tipping points for me when I started reading about the endocannabinoid system, and it evolved 500 million years ago in like these, tiny, just these little organisms that had just kind of evolved like a front and a back and a two sides. And we have this like system and receptors that um, are innate to our body to, and so having that as a whole regulatory system and not really understanding all of its implications, just to me shows that we have so much more to learn, which is also part of the reason why, like, with base we take such a cautious approach to, our products and our offerings, because it's, while it is so incredible, it's not for everyone either, and we don't quite know, like, there's just a lot that we have to learn. So, it's never one of those things where, you know I think there's a spectrum of like people in the industry who are um so gung-ho and so pro cannabis, CBD, everything, that there's a little bit lost in terms of, well, what do we need to do to like do this safely and responsibly? Because one of the things that I also am really interested in, and we are trying to, have a better grasp of with our clinical advisory team is, what are the particular interactions that we need to be aware of? Because CBD, or hemp extract, which contains CBD, as I'm sure you're aware, and CBG, CBC, and all these other natural terpenes, the plant of hemp has over 140 cannabinoids and hundreds of pharmacologically active plant chemicals in it. And those are all going to interact with someone's body, which is unique from person to person. And then layer on top of that any other supplements that person is taking. Layer on top of that any particular medications that person is taking. And you have, a situation where, a lot of companies add in to their product a lot of different herbs. But at that point, when you give it to someone, it's hard to say then, like, what is working, what's not working, what might be the cause of, X, Y, and Z effect that they had. And the whole field of plant research, like whole plant research, is fascinating to think about, because you're not using an isolated compound, you're using a plant with multiple compounds, but that preliminary research shows it's better to use that whole plant compound rather than the isolated compound. And it's just a really interesting problem to think about from a research perspective, as well as a medical perspective, and how to give people the proper advice and guidance.
So where do you see a company in the next 6 months?
So the next 6 months are really exciting for us. We launched actually at the beginning of the pandemic, which was, as many people were dealing with, it was a crazy time. We originally had a go-to-market strategy that involved small, intimate, like, gatherings in people's homes. We were going to do education panels. And then my birthday was March 11th. And then March 13th was when, things kind of blew up, which is also my older sister's birthday. But we were like, okay, we really have to change everything. So we decided to do more of a soft launch and really focus in on, like, just the basics of a good business. Like, let's, make sure that we're serving people well. Let's make sure they're getting the right information, and we have all of our bases set, no pun intended. And then, so we've been growing organically and just, growing slowly and, really trying to get the fundamentals right. But in the next 6 months, we have a few, exciting changes we're making. We've gotten some feedback from customers about the types of full-size products they want. So essentially, our hero product is the Discovery Pack, and it leads people through a guided 7-day process of trying 4 different strengths of hemp extract. So you start at 10 milligrams and you go up to 50 milligrams. And that's just because we found the more we were talking to doctors and researchers, the more that they were saying, well, how I would recommend, for someone to start is to start low and go slow. And we just thought, well, that's great. Let's put that in an experience for someone so that they can have a really easy way to try this for the first time, or, to try it at a measured pace so that you can see, like, is this okay for me? And so the full-size products that people are now asking for is like, okay, I found my perfect strength, and now I just want that strength. So we're going to be launching single strength full-size products, continuing to grow and get our name out there in press. And then we're continuing to grow our clinical advisory team, which is really exciting. And we're focusing a lot on producing content that our customers really want to see, and tackling the topics that are hard to tackle, like medication interactions, but that we feel like are really important for people to understand. So it's an exciting growth phase for us.
Well, that sounds awesome. And where can people find you and what you are doing? I
Yeah.
am fascinated by this. And where can people find you and what you are doing?
Totally. Well, you can find Base at basehealth.com. So it's BAC as in cat E health.com. And that's because our company name Base comes from the Cannabacea family of the cannabis plants. And it's the in the family tree, it's above cannabis. And so we thought that was a nice call out, although we did just originally really like the name. So we got lucky. And then you can also find us on Instagram is where we do a lot of great programming and content at Base Collective on Instagram. And then we're also on Facebook and Twitter as Base Health, but our website is really our hub for everything. And yeah, I'm present on the social media fairly frequently. So yeah.
And as we wrap this interview up, do you have any questions for me?
Yeah, I think I'm really inspired by you, and you are such a cool woman. And I was wondering, like, what has been your like light at the end of the tunnel for this year? Like, what do you look for, um, in every day to, get through this, get through it stronger? Because
Well,
it's
there's two lights at the end of the tunnel, and there's actually three, which I'm working on as we speak. But there's two lights at the end of the tunnel. One light is to finish my journalism degree, and which I'm working on slowly but surely.
that's so exciting.
And so that's one light. The other light is to I'm in the process of selling my house slash moving. And
Awesome.
other light, well, the other light is to get my own office. That's
Yes.
that's the other light because right now I am in a open floor plan house, and I've lived there for 30 years, by the way. And the 33 years, sorry, I told myself I was younger than it was actually 33 years. And I need to sell this house because I need a better quality of life. My dad has passed away. My mom, I lost her in 2010. And yes, a lot of you don't know this, but when she was still alive, she actually did medical marijuana for the first time because she was feeling so icky that they allowed her to do medical marijuana. And so I believe that, Sarah, I believe that you are going to be, base is going to be great in hospitals just because of you need something to take your pain away.
Mhm.
It's not, it doesn't take rocket science, people. You, the Advil kills your kidneys. I won't take Advil because it kills your kidneys. And I learned that the hard way after watching my father when my father was first diagnosed with something. Later on, we found out that it was stage 4 lung cancer. But
Mm,
I remember him standing in my kitchen pounding, pounding the Advil. And
mm,
then he goes to the hospital. They go, well, we can't put the dye in the contrast dye to do
mm.
a scan to figure out what in the world is wrong with him because his kidneys are so shot.
Wow.
And then they finally figure then
Yeah.
they no, they finally got his kidneys up to a point where they could do something, but all local hospital said he has a shadow on his lungs, and they left it at that. It wasn't until he was taken by my stepmom, not by ambulance, but by my stepmom. Um, he was taken to a hospital 45 minutes away from me and then transferred to a hospital 4 hours away from me, whereupon he was diagnosed with lung cancer. And
Mm.
yeah, that was, but in between, he came home for 9 days because the hospital kicked him kicked him out. They kicked him out of a local hospital. They said, we can't do anything for you. And I believe still to this
No.
day, if he wasn't pounding the Advil to begin with to mask the pain from the lung cancer, because cancer could be very painful, especially when you have a mass present on your lung. And so I believe if he wasn't pounding the Advil and doing all that, well, I believe that our local hospital, that's only 5 minutes away from my house,
Mhm.
could have done a better job in diagnosing. But when, so my point being, my PSA being, um, is get when you walk into a hospital, just be very, 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 very careful
Mhm.
on what you tell these doctors. No. And he didn't want, I come to find out later that my dad didn't want to admit that he smoked weed, that
Yeah.
he did weed all his life, and he didn't want to admit that he smoked it. And
Mhm.
my stepmom, who was there, made him admit it, and he finally admitted
Yeah.
it, and the doctors were like, "Okay, yeah, that's a good one." But he was using it more for recreational purposes.
Mhm.
But I also believe that we should look in the route of alternative medicine, not just the we send people to the hospital and let them die essentially. And
Mhm.
we should also start looking at, okay, what can we do for this person who's on death's door?
Yeah. 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 Absolutely. Yeah. I'm so sorry to hear about your mom and your dad.
Well, that's okay. They both died of
Mhm.
medical malpractice. My
Mhm.
dad died of basically what I like to call nursing home abuse. My mom
Mhm.
died of viral meningitis in the hospital.
Oh,
So,
yes.
yeah, but you have to look when you look at palliative care and when you look at hospice, you have to look at the whole aspect of the person.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's I think like yeah, it's all I think looking at like what brings meaning to that person's life and what's important for them to feel fulfilled and to yeah get have joy in their life is really really important, sometimes more so than the um physiological kind of measurements, especially as you do get closer to death. um
Yeah. No. And if we put we can do it for my mom, but particularly I actually interviewed a palliative care expert way back
Mhm.
when on the podcast, and she we talked about palliative care. I know, and this is after my mom died, And because they were so stuck in, we can't take care of this person, we recommend hospice. And I'll never forget, I I said to my stepmom, I think they recommend hospice. And my stepmom goes, no, they didn't. No, they didn't. And I'm like, well, you can't kick a person out of the hospital with and put them in a rehab center and let them die. Basically, that's what happened. They let him die. And so they let my dad die. But I'm like, hello, if I would have been there, I would have um talked to them about palliative care,
Yeah.
hospice, and just let my mom follow my lead just a little bit because um because when you're on death's door, all you want is hope. And when you're on death's door, let's say you got COVID and you're on death's door, all you want is COVID. All you want is hope. So basically, when and I know in hospitals now, in every medical institution now, you're not allowed to bring another person in with you. It's the doctors and nurses, and you're on a ventilator in the worst case scenario. And so, but at least consider hospice and palliative care. And my last PSA is at least consider what BASE is doing for their clients. And maybe Sarah can help you. I don't know. But at least let's explore all the options. Let's take it from a base point, no pun intended. But,
I know once you start saying it,
from
you
a
say
basic point and expand from there. And let's use hospice and palliative care, then bring base in. And then, yeah, because you may be able to extend quality of life in those final days just a little bit. Just a little bit. We're not asking for a miracle here. We're asking just, and it breaks my heart every time I think about it, because what could have been done in my dad's case, it could have been completely different. And I was supposed to drive, turn, come home and take a break, and then turn around and drive back down to Denver. So support him with chemo. Of course, that didn't happen. But if it was palliative care or hospice in Denver, I would have driven back down to Denver and did the whole hospice stint. But we doctors, and it drives me nuts. Doctors don't look at the whole person. They just look at the disease at hand. And it drives me nuts. As long as I've been in the medical field as a patient with cerebral palsy, it drives me crazy. I I don't think I told you guys this, but I will tell you guys this, and then we'll wrap up. But I had a doctor at one point tell me, no, it's not a lack of, it's a lack of movement cough. No, we won't see you in office because of the pandemic and because of COVID. And I'm like, no, I have rattling in my chest. Number one, I have rattling in my chest. You can't just give me antibiotics and send me on my merry merry way.
Mhm.
And so, yeah. And so I finally switched doctors. I said, nope, I'm out of here, you guys. And so that's what I did. And they were so shocked
Mhm.
as the patient advocate that I switched doctors. And they're like, what did we do wrong? And I'm like, yeah, number one, you guys didn't give me the information. Number two, you guys gave me antibiotics and
Mhm.
sent me on my merry way. And
Mhm.
now my next doctor, one, she sent me for a chest x-ray. Two, she sent me for a COVID test.
Mhm.
Those two came back negative. And then the third and hopefully the final step is getting diagnosed with asthma. And the reason why I'm 99% positive it's asthma is because I have a family history of asthma. And so we need to look at every single disease from the bottoms up, and
Mhm.
then we need to start with the base point and go out from there. Because yeah, if
Totally.
we're not if we're not doing that, we're not doing that. And they say, oh, you cannot bring your family members in if you have COVID or this, and this. I'm like, if they're on death's door, put them in a hospice and then let the family members say goodbye.
Yeah, that's a particularly tough thing right now, and
That's
just
a
it
particularly
adds to the
thing.
tragedy, and
Yeah.
I can understand how, I mean, yeah, it feels necessary, and there's no good answer to that, and it's just so heartbreaking to think of the number of people who have had to go through that and not say goodbye.
Yeah, not affected by
And
it at least.
yeah.
But Sarabeth, it was amazing having you on, and
Thank you so much. I enjoyed
that
it so much.
you I hope that I helped you out and your company, and I can't wait to see what you do when you get big. I get to say, "Oh, I interviewed way back when," and because medical marijuana is so, and the cannabis industry is so fascinating to me, and alternative medicine is so fascinating to me, and yeah, but we gotta respect it, you guys. We can't be overdoing it. But yeah, but
Well, definitely, like, alongside of traditional medicine, like, it has its place, and I'm hoping that the two can work in harmony, and
I'm
it can be
hoping
an
that
additive.
too. I'm hoping that too in my lifetime. I'm hoping that I
Yeah.
see that the two could work in harmony.
Mhm.
And so I appreciate you guys' support, and I hope you enjoyed this episode with Sarah. And I hope you go discover base health and see what they're doing. And Sarah, do you ship internationally or do you ship
No, not right now. Right now,
right
we're all
now? Okay.
domestic. Yeah.
Okay. I
Hopefully soon.
but no, because we're dealing with um weed and it all
Well, so actually, just as a quick clarification, right now we only are dealing with hemp extract.
okay.
So it
So
contains
have
CBD and just,
yeah,
yeah, trace THC because it's full
yeah,
spectrum. So it's
trace
federally
THC.
legal,
Now
and
you
it's not
taught
considered to be.
now you taught me something. You, you I'm going to have to do some more research on this myself. Now you taught me something. So trace THC, and you are not dealing with international waters yet. You are dealing with primarily domestic
Yes.
shipping. But go check them out, you guys, if this is something you're interested in. Thanks, you guys. Bye, you guys.
Thank you.